Alrighty, guys, I'm now 4-0, my last 4 daily best plays on my website. And if you want to see a video breakdown of every one of my personal bets here today, the only way you can do that is to watch my board member podcast. And the only way to access my board member podcast is to join my full access, all-inclusive board member package on my website. And before we get into some more of that, just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to our college basketball free pick video here today for Friday, February 24th, 2023. Happy Friday to you. The weekend's finally here. Of course, my name is Brock Page. I've been giving out free sports picks right here on YouTube since 2016. I also sell my personal sports bets on patreon.com/BrockPage. And once again, guys, if you want to see a full video breakdown on every one of my personal bets here today, you can do that right now by becoming a board member on my website. Now, folks who are signed up to my all-inclusive board member package, they get access to the board member podcast every single day for the next 30 days. You also get access to every single personal play, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days as well. The math works out to be just $1.66 a day. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. And what I do on patreon.com/BrockPage is I actually share with you which one of these free plays on these videos that I'm actually betting on personally. I currently have over 535 members who are signed up and active on that site right now. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to start off in the Big East. I'm talking about Xavier at Seton Hall, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Xavier's -1.5, totals 140 and a hook. Now, Xavier is one of the best shooting teams in the country. They're in the top 5 in field goal percentage, and they make nearly 41% of their three-pointers on the road. Sully Boom, he's leading the team in scoring and also knocks down 41% of his long balls. Meanwhile, Jack Nunge averages over 14.5 points a night himself. He's also making 41% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing a Seton Hall team who lost 3 out of their last 4, and they have a tough time getting on the scoreboard. The Pirates are averaging only 68 points a game. Now, injury-wise, Kaderi Richmond and Dre Davis, they are both questionable for Seton Hall. When it comes to the total in this one, Seton Hall saw overs recently against the likes of Georgetown, Creighton, and St. John's. Meanwhile, Xavier on the other side, they are 64% to the over for the entire year. I'm leaning towards Xavier, -1.5, over 140 and a hook. Next matchup, little A10 action. I'm talking about Richmond at VCU, 7 o'clock East. Virginia Commonwealth's -9, totals 134. Now, VCU's been real good at home. They're 13-3 in their own arena, and they've also been beating up on the A10. Out of 15 conference ball games, the Rams got the W 12 times, and most of that is thanks to some solid defensive play. These guys are in the top 25 in defensive points per game. Jaden Nunn has 47 steals and 15 blocks. He's also drilling 40% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Adrian Baldwin, he's leading the team in points and also grabs just about 3 steals a game. They're facing a Richmond team who's got just 1 road victory on the season. And speaking of road games, the Spiders are allowing 75 points per contest in their travels. Now, total-wise, Richmond saw unders recently against the likes of LaSalle, Fordham, and St. Bonaventure. Meanwhile, VCU's 63% to the under in their own building. I'm going to lean toward Virginia Commonwealth, -9, under 134. Next matchup, little Sun Belt action. I'm talking about Marshall at Old Dominion, 7 o'clock East. Marshall's -3, totals 149. Now, the Herd's a top 10 scoring team in the country. They're averaging over 82 points a night, and they're in the top 15 in offensive boards. Tavion Kinsey, he scores over 22 points a game. He's 6th in the country in points per contest. Meanwhile, Andrew Taylor is averaging 20 points a game himself. Now, they're taking on an ODU team who's definitely not built for a track meet. They scored just 68 points a game, and And they're arguably the worst three-point shooting team at home in the Sun Belt. Now, injury-wise, Ben Stanley and Emo Esian, they're both questionable for the Monarchs. When it comes to the total, Old Dominion 64% of the under at home. Meanwhile, Marshall saw unders recently against the likes of Louisiana and Appalachian State. Give me Marshall -3, under 149. Next matchup, little Metro action here. If Young Metro don't trust you, well, you know the rest. Anyway, Siena, Riders, 7 o'clock East. Riders -3, totals 134. And even though they're favored, Riders on a 2-game skid, and they've had their hands full with Siena. They lost 7 out of their last 10 meetings against the Saints. They allowed over 72 points a game in those contests. And speaking of Siena, they're 11-5 against the Metro themselves. They're a top 25 defensive rebounding team. Jared Billups, he grabs over 6.5 rebounds a night. He also averages nearly double-digit points. Meanwhile, Javian McCollum, he's scoring over 15 points a game himself. When it comes to the total, Siena went 70% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Riders 11-5 to the under against conference opponents. Give me Siena +3, under 134. Next game, Iona, Mount St. Mary's, 7 o'clock East. Iona's -9.5, totals 139 and a hook. Now, the Gales have won 7 straight, and they continue to dominate the Metro. Iona's 13-3 in conference play, and they're in the top 15 in the nation in defending the three-pointer. Nelly Jr. Joseph, he has 34 steals on the season and nearly 40 blocks. He's also averaging over 15 points a game offensively. Meanwhile, Walter Clayton, he leads the team in scoring and also drills 41% of his three-pointers. They're facing a Mount St. Mary's team who scores just 60 points a game at home. When it comes to covering the number, the Mount failed to cover in 7 out of their last 10. And when it comes to the number, the Mount's 10-7 to the under against conference opponents. Meanwhile, Iona's 63% to the under in their conference games themselves. Give me Iona -9.5, under 139 and a hook. Next game, Coastal Carolina taking on Troy, 7:30 p.m. East. Troy's -10, totals 143. Now, Troy's scoring a good amount of points at home. They're averaging over 80 points per contest in front of their home crowd. And they're making nearly 50% of their field goals in that same category. Kristen Eugene, he's making just about 40% of his three-pointers. He also averages double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Zay Williams, he leads the roster in scoring and rebounds. And speaking of boards, the Shants have had a tough time grabbing rebounds on the defensive end of the court. They're also giving up 79 points a game in their travels. Now, injury-wise, Issam Mostafa is questionable for the Shants. When it comes to the total, 4 out of Coastal's last 7 did get over. Meanwhile, Troy went 5-2 to the over in their last 7 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Troy -10, over 143. Next game, Southern Miss, Texas State, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Southern Miss is -2.5, totals 135. Now, this does feel like a really good spot for Southern Miss backers. They're arguably the toughest team in the Sun Belt to score against, and they limit their opponents to just 40% shooting from the field. Austin Crowley has 13 blocks on the season and over 60 steals. Now, Crowley's also leading the team in points per game. Meanwhile, Felipe House, he's scoring nearly 15 points a game himself. He drills 40% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing a Texas State team who's one of the lowest scoring teams in the country. The Bobcats also took the loss in 9 out of their last 13 at home. When it comes to the total, Southern Miss saw their last 3 straight stay under the line. Unders against the likes of Old Dominion, Georgia Southern, and South Alabama. Give me Southern Miss -2.5, under 135. Next matchup, Georgia State, James Madison, 8 o'clock East. JMU's -15 at home, totals 143. And even though this is a really big number here, JMU should be able to get the job done. They're a top 10 scoring team at home in the entire country, and they're making 52% of their field goals on their own campus. Now, leading scorer Terrence Edwards, he's making 52% of his field goals. He also drills 42% of his long balls. Meanwhile, Julian Wooden, he's knocking down over 44% of his shots from beyond the arc. They're facing a Georgia State team who's a winless 0-10 in the road game, still looking for that first road win of the season. Pretty tough task going against JMU here to get that first road win. And out of 17 conference ball games, the Panthers got the W only 3 times. Now, when it comes to the injury report, Jones, Johnson, Hudson, and Kleiss, they're all questionable for Georgia State. When it comes to the scoring, Georgia State 60% to the over in their road trips. Meanwhile, James Madison saw overs against the likes of Marshall, Old Dominion, and Georgia Southern. I'm going to lean toward JMU minus 15, over 143. Next contest, Air Force, UNLV, 9:30 p.m. East. UNLV's minus 9 at home, totals 137. I'll tell you what, for a team laying nearly double digits here, the Rebels have had a tough time covering at home. They're 5-9 against the spread in the Thomas and Mack Center. They also took the loss in 10 out of 15 conference ball games. Now they're facing an Air Force team who's covering in 64% of their road games themselves. And more recently, guys, they covered against the likes of Wyoming, Boise State, and New Mexico twice. Now when it comes to defensive play, the Falcons are in the top 20 in the nation in guarding the three-pointer on the road. Rytis Petritis, yes, that is his name, Rytis Petritis. He has over 20 blocks on the year along with 28 steals. Now, Petritis is also averaging double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Jake Heidbreder, he's averaging over 14.5 points per contest himself. And he drills nearly 40% of his three-pointers. Now, injury-wise for UNLV, Luis Rodriguez and Eli Parquette, they're both doubtful to suit up here tonight. And when it comes to the total, UNLV saw unders against Boise State, Wyoming, and Nevada. Give me Air Force plus 9, keeping that one close, under 137. Next and final matchup for the video, it is going to be Nevada taking on Fresno State, 11 o'clock Eastern start time. Nevada's minus 3, totals 129. Now, Nevada's really given Fresno the business in recent meetings. They're 9-1 in their last 10 against the Bulldogs. They also averaged 77 points per contest in those very meetings. Jared Lucas, he scores over 16.5 points a game. He's drilling just about 40% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Keenan Blackshear and Will Baker, they're scoring over 14 points per contest themselves. They're facing a Fresno State squad who's just 6-10 against the Mountain West. And they might just be the worst offensive team in the country. The Bulldogs average only 60 points a game on their own court. And when it comes to the number, Fresno's 8-3 to the under in their last 11 home games. Meanwhile, Nevada saw unders against the likes of San Jose State, Utah State, and Air Force. Give me Nevada minus 3, under 129. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap. Actually, we don't need to do that. We're just going to put the picks in the description section below. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Friday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.